welcome to another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com, where first and foremost, we're a magazine of hope. Whether you're considering addiction recovery for yourself or a loved one, you're actively in recovery a short while, maybe many, many years, you're going to find all kinds of information related to addiction, recovery, and living a happy, successful, and sober life here at Recovery Today. My name is Rob Handling. I'm the producer, executive producer of Recovery Today Magazine. I'm joined by another really cool guest I'm so excited about interviewing here. He is the creator of my all-time favorite bread, Dave's Killer Bread. I've actually never really used a prop in my intro, but I happen to have this just in my kitchen. So his story is absolutely amazing. For those of you that don't know it, after serving a total of 4 prison sentences, 15 years for crimes ranging from burglary to armed robbery, drug dealing, Dave Dahl has turned his life around his last stint, and he rejoined his family's bakery after his last release. He went on to co-create Dave's Killer Bread, which was sold in 2015 for a gigantic, tidy sum of $275 million, according to Wikipedia. A lot. But once sharing abandoned houses with cockroaches in Detroit, he now lives in a luxurious high-rise penthouse in downtown Portland, but really is giving back. He is the epitome of transformation and helping out the other people around him. So, Dave, thanks so much for taking a minute to jump on here today. Real excited to have you with Recovery Today Magazine.
A real pleasure. Thanks.
All right, so my first question is always kind of the easiest kind of question, to start off with here. Take me back, before Dave's Killer Bread, and just, if you will, for those, I think maybe on the East Coast it's not. Some of my friends said I'd never heard of it. I don't know if it's mostly West Coast or, but for those that don't know,
it's everywhere. It's all over the country.
All right.
It's in Canada. They're making it in Canada and Mexico. It's everywhere.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about your story.
I grew up with very low self-esteem. I didn't like myself a lot. I lived with my parents. My parents were Seventh-day Adventists, and I went to school, Seventh-day Adventist schools and church, and my life revolved around that. Until it didn't. Until one day, or at one point, I just stopped doing it, and I got really lost from that point on. I didn't really know what to believe in. So over the years, I went through a lot of changes before I discovered methamphetamine. Methamphetamine was like my first savior, my first transformation. When I realized that you could do something about the way you feel. So the meth actually was just really, cleared my mind in a way that made me stop thinking about how bad I felt, and I started to, really enjoying my life. Started screwing off jobs and started selling dope and doing, things to raise money so that I could stay high. And then my morals went down with all that, and I eventually went to prison 4 times for crimes ranging from burglary to armed robbery to possession or distribution of meth.
And so your family, and it's a story we hear a lot. It seems like now, actually, it's more about opiates, but hear a lot about methamphetamine. And your family owned a bread business. I kind of was thinking like you learned how to bake bread when you were in prison, but I think that it was more you grew up in that, right?
Yeah, I grew up working in a bakery that was an alternative food bakery, because my parents were Seventh-day Adventists, and they had sort of a natural foods plant, and we had a health food store, and we had a natural foods bakery, and so I learned quite a bit about baking bread as a kid.
I didn't think about the Seventh-day Adventist part. Now I'm kind of connecting the dots a little bit about, a wholesome, nutritious kind of bread. Seventh-day Adventists are very strict in anything that is good for your body, anything that's bad for your body type of stuff. They're very conscious of that, right?
Yeah. That is sort of the ideal in the Seventh-day Adventist. It doesn't mean everybody follows that, but yes.
Okay. So you're kind of in and out and in and out. And one of the things that I noticed when I was reading your story, and this is the thing that was cool, is I know that the story's kind of changed a little bit, that now that the company's been sold, they've modified it, like you're saying. I saw it probably 10 years ago was when I first came across your bread. And I was like, this is so cool, and then the bread rocked the house. So... but one of the things that was on here is it says that your brother Glenn, who was running the bakery at the time while you're in, he said that he saw a change in you. What kind of this brought you in after you got out to start baking? What was the change? It sounded pretty significant.
Yeah, I was suicidal for quite a long time while I was doing time in there. I was like, I came to the point. This is my 4th time in prison, mind you, and I'm like,
how old were you then, by the way?
At this point, at the point that I'm talking about, I was 38.
Okay.
I was 38 and I was suicidal, and it was 2001, and I just kept thinking about, well, how can I do something? What can I do about this? Because I don't have anything to lose. What is the answer? Because I really I don't have any reason to live. There's got to be something, right, that's going to change.
And this is like you got a lot of time on your hands now. You're to contemplate these kind of things.
Yeah, I did a total of 15 years. And at this point, I had done about, maybe a total of 11 years altogether. And I had still years to do. But I would lay up at night sweating and just stressed out, not being able to sleep, and thinking about, how could I take myself out? And finally, one day, I filled out a kite. They call it a kite in there, where it's communication, inmate communication to staff. And I would fill out this kite over and over again, saying, hey, I need some help, I need to talk to somebody. But I didn't actually drop it in the box for months. I finally, one day I just said, screw it, I dropped it in the box. It's like, basically I'm telling on myself. I'm going against the grain of being a convict, and I'm saying, look, I need help. It was a surrender moment, and it was the best thing I ever did. I asked for help for my depression. I had always, to this point, thought that, depression made sense. There was a reason why I was depressed. It wasn't a psychological condition. It was, or an ailment or anything. It was just my life sucked. And so I naturally felt it, terrible. But when they gave me the meds for this, it was in the first time it was Paxil. And within a few weeks, my mind started clearing, and I stopped going down these negative paths in my mind, and I was able to start thinking. And I was also at about the same time I went into a program for computer-aided drafting, and it just taught me that I wasn't stupid, that I had a future, all of a sudden. And then every day it was great. I would jump out of bed and just couldn't wait to get down to my computer and start working. This was the way things began to be for me. And it was like this for the rest of my time. And then I was able to get out of prison and had the same sort of designed mindset that I'd learned. And I did the bread.
So your brother, was it a challenge like reconciling or coming back, or how was that?
I knew, what I had discovered about myself was this thing, humility, right? I had learned to, first of all, accept myself as I was and not try to be something else. Or, you know, I was great at, I had become just who I am, you know, and loving that. And so I thought that I would get out and be able to get along with everybody because here I am, this humble guy, you know. But in reality, that was easier said than done. I didn't get along with my brother and my nephew. You know, because of my past, here I am coming in there kind of like a cowboy shooting from the hip and making stuff happen. But everybody's like, this is uncomfortable. You know, this guy is really making us uncomfortable. And so I had a real hard time within the organization. But my brother did believe in me. He believed in that I was creative and a go-getter, a hard worker. And so he did push me. He did kind of help guide me to the next phase of things. Essentially, long story short, I started working on bread as a project. Mm-hmm. I had already done quite a few other things. I went to work for $12 an hour when I first got out, and it was enough. You know what I mean? It was enough. I lived in my mom's garage, and I made $12 an hour, and I was able to just do okay. Well, my brother and I discussed the bread thing because we were set up, our equipment was set up for making bread, and we had a small infrastructure here in Portland that was able to distribute the bread. So I took it upon myself to try to create a bread that was different and better than what's out there, and that I didn't know if I could do that, you know, but I knew the process, and the process, like it was in drafting. As a drafter, you replicate. You first learn to replicate something, and then you make it better. Okay, I would do that in 3D space on a computer. Now I was working with nutrition programs and scales, and you know these various tools that I had as a baker. So I learned how to make what was out there, the best of what was out there, and then I said, okay, this is how I'm going to make it better, and that's how Dave's Killer Bread came about.
I think it's really remarkable. It's so interesting. As an entrepreneur myself, and I've got kids. I tell people, you know, I look for like a paradigm shift, like what's the new thing that's going to come along. Why didn't I invent Uber? Why didn't I, you know, or I love Shark Tank, you know, like somebody has a great, why didn't I invent that, right? Yeah. But it's so funny to look at like, who thinks of like, I can do a better bread? I mean, it's been around for forever. Like, how could you think like, I'm going to have a new spin on bread, unless it was like totally carb-free and tasted like a French loaf or something like that. Like, how could you do that better?
Well, that was the opportunity that I had. See, now, if I had gone out and my brother my dad was the one who started the company way back when. But if my opportunity had been in something else, I would have had to make the best in something else. This was my opportunity. So I said, well, bread, I'm scared to death of this opportunity because, you know, who am I to beat all these big guys, you know? It's like a David and Goliath, literally, David and Goliath situation. And I just got lucky, I guess, you know, but
yeah,
you make your
own
luck.
Buy that. My main question was like how, I don't buy that at all. Like, I think.
Well, you make your own luck, but.
Yeah,
you know.
And it's where opportunity and preparedness meet, I think is what Napoleon Hill used to say, you know.
Yeah.
But like, so why did it take off like the way that it did? I don't know, maybe all bread is worth that much. I don't think, but like, why did it do what it did?
Well, it really, okay, I'll tell you basically the mindset. Fortunately, I wasn't hindered by a lot of the big corporate bread companies, which Dave's Killer Bread might be considered now, but they're hamstrung by cost analyses and all these different things. Or you got to make this bread fit in this cost category. You got to do this. It's got to meet that. I didn't have anybody telling me that. Fortunately, I give my brother credit for that because he's very cost conscious. I made a Cadillac of breads, the Ferrari of breads, because I wasn't held down. So what we found out was that this was the most expensive bread to make, and it was going to be the most expensive bread to sell. Fortunately, we had an opportunity for test marketing at the Portland Farmers Market. They used to have this event called Summer Loaf, where they would invite people who were artisan bakers could bring all their items and get them tested out by the public. It was a really cool thing. It only happened for a couple of years, and here I was able to take advantage of that. I had 4 varieties ready to go. I took them to the market, and it was an immediate hit. And from that point on, it was like demand was what carried it. Nice. It was amazing demand.
So let's kind of go back a little bit, if we can, to mental illness and depression, and you're in the pokey and stuff, and then you're getting where did the recovery start? Where did that kind of stuff start happen? Were you clear thinking? You're sober at this point, getting sober? What was going on then?
Yeah, to tell the truth, in prison I was totally clean and sober, and but I wasn't really thinking in terms. It hasn't really ever been like recovery to me. The word recovery, I'm always. It's very scientific in my mind. It's kind of like, what's it going to take, And I do believe in a higher power, by the way, but I don't know what that means. I just know that something's there. But I'm depressed. I was so depressed in there, suicidal. I didn't realize that it was a clinical thing, that it could be diagnosed. I just thought that I felt bad because life sucked. So my suicidal tendencies were there, but when I got this medication, and I think part of it was also the humility and the surrender, that, maybe the pill was a bit of a placebo, because the concepts that worked for me were humility and acceptance and hard work, just down-to-earth realness is what I discovered. And I kept going with that. Well, the problem was I got out of prison. I didn't really see a problem with drinking a little bit. That had never been my issue. So I started drinking, but I was so busy working that I was addicted to my work. And so the alcohol was almost meaningless to me. It wasn't until I took my first vacation in Mexico, about 3 years into it, that I discovered tequila. And tequila became more and more like a necessary thing in my life. And this happened over years. I was out speaking. People were asking me to tell my story to all different groups, including one time I gave the invocation on the Oregon Senate floor. I mean, things were just amazing. But I would always celebrate with a drink afterwards, and I didn't hide it. I didn't hide that. I thought it was okay. Until it wasn't, until it became more powerful than everything else I was doing. And so I had to, I thought I had figured everything out, and I created this brand, and I worked my ass off. So I thought I deserved to celebrate, and eventually I had to relearn my lessons, and I had to learn some new ones.
So was it from a 12-step program initially? I mean, I know I saw like a chip, on your website. So was it a 12-step program that you finally kind of surrendered to and started working? How did you, from where you are today?
Well, it's been a bumpy road. It hasn't been like as soon as I I started having problems in my company because there were events, there were like instances of issues that would happen. I had an assistant who started, I ended up like slapping him, not really slapping him, but doing this to him one day. I was drinking quite a bit, but I was just playing with him, but maybe playing a little too hard. And this got HR involved. Here I am, the president of the company, but now we're going to HR and discussing this. And now I'm looking, okay, now I'm on the radar of all this, of everybody. And you know, at this point we had sold half the company, so we had investors and we had all these people to answer to.
Yeah. And
now I'm becoming sort of a loose cannon, a liability in people's minds because I'm so out there. Everybody sees me all the time.
Yeah.
So after this happened, I agreed to go to treatment in Utah. I went to treatment and got reintroduced to the 12 steps. Now, it's not like I hadn't been there before.
Yeah.
And the 12 steps resonated quite well with me. I did not work the steps completely. I worked a few of them, you know, and then I ended up drinking again. When I got out of the treatment, after a while I drank again. I got in more trouble. A lot of other crazy stuff happened. I don't know how deep we want to go here, but things went
deep
really...
as you like, you know, deep as you like. It's okay, or deep or not deep as you like, you know, whatever.
Well, I think it might be important to mention that.
Sure. I mean, the main thing I look at, not to interrupt you that much, but like, you know, we're talking to people here, our subscribers, as I mentioned, they're people that are thinking, shit, maybe I have a problem, or maybe my kid has a problem, or I have a problem, or I've been sober for a month and a half, or, you know, something like that, man. And I know that, like, although I'll intro you and go, hey, you gotta do jail, and then made this bread and make it $1 billion, I know that there's a lot more to it. So, you know, just anything that you think would help a guy out, man, go for it.
Well, okay, in my situation, I'm out there in the public, in the public eye, and people think of me as this guy who has overcome his past and now he's this good guy. And I just had a drinking problem, right? I wasn't out committing crimes, anything like that. I was just celebrating. And so I was a different person, but now the alcohol was compromising that. And I went out. I remember taking a friend of mine and a few friends. We went up to my cabin on Mount Hood here, and we just got wasted, you know. And one of my friends ended up taking off in my car. And long story short, actually he was going to get some cocaine, which, you know, he had talked me into that. I hadn't been doing coke, and I was like drunk and hey, let's do it, you know.
Sure, man.
He never showed up with the coke. In fact, he never showed up anywhere. You know, the next thing most people knew about, he ended up dead, and they found him in a ditch 40 some odd days later.
Oh wow.
Nobody saw him. Well, somebody did, but I don't know the story after he left there. So he ends up dead. This is a good friend of mine from way back. Of course, we were dope buddies back in the day. I love the guy, right? And the last thing in the world I would do is kill him. But I started getting accused of murdering this guy on Facebook. People were coming on the Dave's Killer Bread Facebook page.
Oh, wow.
And accusing me of murdering this guy. So
wow.
At this point, I had to go get me a good attorney.
Yeah.
Now, in my company, if you can imagine the company, how they're feeling at this point, they are freaked out. And I got my attorney, and at this point, you know, not too long after that, I quit drinking. And I was banned from my own company. I couldn't even walk on, you know.
Wow.
It was, and the resentment was building in me so much. I'm like, I created all of this, and now I'm, you know, banished. And I just didn't feel like I deserved it, you know what I mean? And I got more and more angry, and the company was trying to distance themselves from me. And I'm just upset. So one day, I hadn't been drinking for a while, but this was my first introduction to my manic side. I'm starting to become manic, and I was somewhat hypomanic at this point.
So is it like bipolar, you mean, type of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is when I discovered what bipolar was, because I've been depressed. I didn't realize that I could go the other direction. So I walked into the storefront. We call it Killer Bread Quarters here in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And I walked in there, and I saw this cardboard cutout of myself, same life size, same size as me. I got in there, and I'd always hated this thing anyway. But when I saw it, and I realized I'm not allowed here, but this guy is, you know, I saw it. I punched it. I punched it. It's well documented around here.
Okay.
And it scared some people, you know, and I was just kind of like playing around, but I was resentful. There's no doubt about it. And I'm like, well, that's a cardboard cutout of me, and I can punch it if I want to, you know. There was no real thought process. I just did it. So by the end of the night, see, that was in the morning, and by the end of that evening, I had smashed into 3 cop cars out in Washington County, which was, and it's totally inexplicable. You know, I have no idea why it happened, other than the resentment. And you know, I hadn't drank for a while, although that night I drank a few shots of tequila for the first time in weeks, and I didn't have a blood alcohol content. I had a legal blood alcohol content, but the alcohol really didn't have any effect. I was, as far as I know, I was just crazy, and cops beat the crap out of me, and that was when I finally came off the manic episode. You know, it took me several weeks. I checked in. My attorney insisted that I check into Cedar Hills Hospital, which is sort of a mental hospital. And I ended up doing that. And a few weeks, you know, the whole time I was in there, I was having this manic, hypomanic kind of happy-go-lucky sort of mentality, even after all this had happened. But when I saw an article about me in the local paper, it was called Breaking Bread, and it had the logo of Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was funny at first, but then when I read it and I saw what people were saying about me and all this, it just broke my heart. You know, it knocked me on my ass. And I experienced the deepest depression that I ever imagined, you know.
Wow.
And I had been depressed before. But I realized I had let down hundreds of thousands of people. You know, that was in my mind. I had let down everybody who knew the story. And it took me a long time to overcome that. But I ended up...
How long did that depression last?
I'd say a month for the depression, but then the whole process of high, low, kind of went on for a year or two, year and a half. Mm-hmm. I thought I was well, but I really wasn't quite there yet.
What do you do now to manage it, to manage your depression?
I don't get depressed. I take Effexor, which I've taken forever. The depression isn't a problem. it would only probably hit me if circumstances pushed me there, you know. The manic side of it, I can kind of see it coming, and others can see it coming. And I also take a lamotrigine, which is a manic stabilizer, and I get my sleep. What's that?
Kind of level.
I get a lot. Make sure I get my sleep. I make sure I get every. You know, I do the right things.
I don't know. I with someone that, you know, I suffered some pretty bad depressions in my day, and as well. So I have a real thing for that, and just looking at, you know, connect the dots, help anybody as well, and I think like recovery or sobriety, I think there's a lot of different paths that you can go. I don't really care as long as, you know, you get to a spot where you're happy and healthy and productive and, you know, feel like you're living on point, on purpose. I generally feel like if I can feel it coming on, and if there's really not always an explanation necessarily for it. Not really sure. But, you know, I'll go through my affirmations. A lot of times I think I saw a YouTube video where this guy said he repeats "thank you" over and over and over. He goes for a walk. He does a lot of deep breathing. I think that breathing is actually very, very good for mental health.
Do you take any meds? No.
I don't take any meds at all. No.
See, I think the meds help me. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't stop taking them just because I don't want to take a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, I took them years ago for a little while, and my son was diagnosed ADD, and so he started taking an ADD med, and then I realized, and I had partners, you know, doing a lot of digital marketing and stuff. A lot of people that are internet marketers are very ADD and entrepreneurs, and one of my partners was like, dude, you're so ADD, it's ridiculous. So then I started, okay, well maybe I'm ADD. And so then I took ADD meds for a while too, but then I just felt like I was high all the time. Like I felt like I was on drugs. Like,
but you were probably taking Adderall or some sort of.
I think I was taking the same thing as my son. I was taking Concerta, and I took some depression stuff. And then I don't know how it was, and of course, you know, this is obviously my story, but I just started weaning off of it a little bit. That was many years ago, and then now. What I personally do is I like to go to the gym. I like to release endorphins and.
Me too. That helps.
Yeah, you know, I like to do those kind of things. I think there's a lot of I make the bed in the morning type of stuff. I think just I force myself to smile and go things that give me anxiety to move toward some things like that. So I have a real thing about depression and anxiety, which kind of leads me a little bit in terms of talking about like. You know, what's your course, or what are your thoughts then, like on your, obviously you're sober now, or not drinking, stop drinking and everything. What are your thoughts on 12-step versus non-12-step type of process? I mean, I think there's a lot of different roads. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's what I think too. I think people are individuals, and you know, Bob and Bill, those guys were individuals, and they came up with 12 steps that worked for them. It doesn't mean it doesn't work for lots of other people, and to some degree it has been helpful for me. But I think the principles that they came up with, anybody can come up with their own program too. Over time, you come up with your own version of that, and some people need. I think some people need the structure of the 12 steps. I do have structure in my life, and when I was doing Dave's Killer Bread, I had so much structure, so much purpose that I was completely into what I was doing, and so there was no time for me to screw that up. I just had good stuff coming in all the time, you know. So what I do now, even after everything, and I thought I had, you know, the depression, and then I got sentenced because of that issue with the cops. I ended up getting sentenced to some assault charges, guilty except for insanity. So now I'm a mental patient. I would have been sentenced to the mental hospital, but they sentenced me to supervision in the streets instead, and a lot of restrictions. I have less restrictions than I used to have, but there was a point where I had a shoulder surgery, and I took some opiates, and it was the first time I ever realized that I liked opiates. And I thought, I let myself I talked myself into becoming an addict. So I ended up getting busted with that in a dirty way. And then I went to treatment again. And so again, I was back on the 12 steps. And to this day, I still go, it's 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. To this day, I still go to AA meetings a couple a week.
Yep.
They're mandated by my
program.
My program, and so I have to go. But I enjoy going. I love to listen to other people's stories, and I believe in the 12 steps. But really what has worked for me is ever since that 2.5 years ago when I started treatment, I also started this drug called Vivitrol. And Vivitrol for me is fantastic because even if I want to get high, I can't. So there's no point even doing it. So that's where I go with the scientific aspect. I mean, it's my way. It's my insurance policy against getting high. It costs me $800 a month, but it's worth it.
Yeah. I don't think I've even heard of that. Is it something that it was court mandated type of a thing?
It was something that I talked to my, I do see a shrink every month. That's part of my program too.
Yeah.
So my shrink said, hey, well, this is time for you maybe to do Vivitrol. And that was the first I'd heard of it. And I said, whatever it's going to take for me to get this right and, not fail again. And so far, so good on that. It's a shot in the ass once a month.
Okay.
And
even if you wanted to get high, you wouldn't do anything, huh?
No. And the problem with that is if I have a couple of surgeries, coming up, and without meds for pain meds, it's gonna suck.
That leads me actually to a couple of questions I always like to ask people in terms of the current state we're at right now. And the first is, what are your thoughts on the opiate crisis? And what can we do to turn it around? And then the second part is related to that, which is something actually Oregon being one of the first states in the country. What are your thoughts on CBD and medicinal THC? I mean, particularly non-hallucinogenic cannabinoids. But what are there's a lot of new research that non-addictive and things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
When it comes to weed, weed is legal here in Oregon.
Yep.
You can become a weed. You can be all about the weed and not go to jail for that. I am not someone who I don't promote. I don't condone using anything to get high.
Yeah.
So weed is not something that I like to see people doing. It's up to them. But like if somebody's working for me and they're smoking weed on the job, I'm not liking it because it changes the way they are. It makes them different. I've never myself enjoyed weed that much, smoking weed.
How about the CBD, the non psychotropic is the word I'm thinking of. How about where it's not high at all? How about that? What are your thoughts?
I'd say more power to you on that. Anything if you can get the CBDs without the high. Yeah. I think if it works, great.
Yeah, you got to check that out for the surgeries coming up. There's some good stuff. So one of the things when I was researching you a little bit that I thought was pretty cool was about your African art, which obviously I can see is really awesome there behind you. And I had read that at one time they thought that you were the largest private collector or something like that of African art. What's the deal with African art? Just something that you liked, or how? What's the connection? And
yeah, that's another really important aspect to my so-called recovery, whatever you want to call it. When I was feeling so down and out about what I had done, you know, how I had made my fall from grace after I was my success with the company, I didn't want to think about me, and I didn't want to feel this whole Dave persona. This had become a painful thing, and you know, I discovered Amazon and eBay for the first time, and I had some money. Next thing you know, I'm buying all this crazy stuff to put on my walls. But then along the way, I discovered old African art, antique African art, and people would be like, "Why are you into African art? What is the connection?" And I just say, there is no connection. That's why I like it so much. It has nothing to do with me. Yeah, nothing at all to do with me. So I went and I started studying it, and it just totally took me away from myself. I think it really helped me heal.
Yeah.
But it was an addiction, and now I think I mostly have overcome that addiction too.
Oh, it's cool. You know, it's cool, man. It's really different, you know, too. It's very unique. How about, obviously, the other kind of elephant in the room there is your music, too, man. Like, so tell me a little bit about that.
I have a band called the Killer Granddaddies, and we play blues and covers of some sorts, and I have some originals, and, you know, we've been playing quite a bit. I think I have one more gig that I'm going to do this year, and then I'm going to take a break from that, but I will always spend time with my guitar and, you know, developing my skills. I love doing that. I think that's another discipline that is really good for my sobriety, but just the overall well-being. Yeah. I need things that I'm working on and aiming for being better.
So what are you working on now? I mean, one thing I definitely wanted to ask, and maybe this is kind of a connecting kind of thing here, too, is I thought it was really cool, you know, looking at the loaf of bread, and then also just online was that Dave's Killer Bread employed like 30% like ex-cons, those that are incarcerated. I forgot what the word is. People don't like ex-cons.
Right, formerly incarcerated. Yeah.
Formerly incarcerated. Okay, I just didn't. So 30% of that, I thought it was pretty amazing, man. Like, what?
Let me tell you about that.
Yeah, tell me about that. Like, I mean.
It didn't start out when we started hiring people because, you know, it was just me, and then it was a few other people, then it was a few other people, and we started, when it became successful, we had to keep hiring kind of fast. We always felt, because of my transformation, I think all of us felt that there were others like me. So why not give people a chance? And so the mistake that I made at first was I would hire friends, and friends notoriously let you down because they're not necessarily ready. You know, you got to find the people who are ready. They could be your friend, or they could be somebody you don't even know. But once you get to know this person, are they ready for this opportunity? And so that became sort of the litmus test for whether they're ready or not. And then, what happened is as we were hiring a lot, we were hiring through a temporary agency. And the temp agency, once they realized we would hire ex-felons, all they would send us was ex-felons. I didn't know that. I didn't know that everybody I was seeing was an ex-felon, but that's who we were picking from. And so it got to be 30 or more % of the company as we got to 300 employees when I left. So nearly 100 people. and they had turned out to be some of the most amazing employees. The cool thing about seeing somebody overcome and change their life is it's exponential. You see the person become a new person. That affects the business, it affects their families, it affects the community. It's amazing. Each person has so much power.
So on the loaf of bread, and I don't want, maybe this was not the original thing, but it's on here even now. It says that you have the bread and everything like that was built on the strong belief that everyone is capable of greatness. Can you kind of expand or tell me a little bit where that whole belief, I mean, obviously you embody it, but what's that about?
That is completely a corporate take on our experience. Those are not the words I would have said, but I do believe that everyone is capable of greatness. You know why? I mean, I thought I was a complete loss, and look at me now. I'm great. I'm having a great life, and
yeah. Are you happy now? Are you happy now?
I'm very happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
Do you feel like I mean, I know it's interesting talking about something like depression and going, God, why am I depressed? Well, I'm in jail. I'm 38. I got a little direction. You know, of course, no wonder I'm not happy. Like my life bites. But in the now, it's like, okay, I'm wealthy. I'm still reasonably young. Obviously, you're healthy. Like it's like, what's not to like? Although, you know, there's a lot of people, of course, that are of means and then in an enviable position that others, and they say, not, you know, yeah, it's still like you take your bags with you, man. Like, you know, that's cool to know. Like, no, I'm in a great spot.
Yeah, I think the key for me, I think why I'm so fortunate and so happy and grateful is that my happiness didn't have anything to do with money. Before I made the bread, I was freaking happy. I got out of prison. Before I got out of prison, I was happy because I had learned how to be free in prison. My mind had become free. And part of that was the drafting, part of it was the humility and acceptance. And I just
liking yourself, as you said, right?
Yeah, accepting myself is the biggest key. And then I started loving myself. It even says it right here. I got some friends who make these T-shirts, and you know, you love yourself. That doesn't mean being a narcissist or, you know, selfish. It means you got to love yourself before you can really love others.
I like it actually, even from the biblical thing. I'm glad you hit on that, as, you know, whatever is the second commandment, or, you know, love your neighbor as yourself. But the thing is, it's interesting is, man, what if you don't love yourself, man? Like, I think that's actually one of the problems that we have today, is that there's such a degradation with the value of human beings and human life, and people hate themselves. Therefore, it doesn't matter what I do to you, man. So I think the whole idea, I do think it's put your own oxygen mask on first and love yourself, man. It doesn't have to be a narcissistic type of thing. I think we're marvelous. And I also do think we're also all capable of greatness.
Yeah, and I do believe that's true. And everybody can overcome whatever it is, but you know, it has to start up here, right? And up here, it's hard to find that moment. I didn't find it till I was 38 years old.
What's your message to a guy that thinks, man, I mean, obviously nobody watching this, the whole content of it, but like, you know, I've been in jail, I've been in this, my life sucks, I'm 35, I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm this, I'm too fucking old, you know, my life, I've wasted my life, right? And I got no prospects, I got nothing, I got no anything. Like, what if you met that guy and that guy was like what kind of life, what can you breathe into that guy, man? What would you say?
Well, it's hard for me to, you know, that's a very general sort of person. But if the person has the same sort of like depression in his past, you know, or if that's sort of his problem, depression, just low self-esteem. These are the problems that I had, you know, and I know that, look, probably the majority of people have experienced low self-esteem at one point or another. The problem, I think the greatest thing that I ever learned was not to care what anybody else thinks. And, I mean, it took me a long time to get there. I think the fact that I did time helped me. The time that I did was such a struggle for me, and it was all up here, that when I overcame my own negative self, I was free to move forward. And here I was in the med line, because I had to go to med line to take care of this depression, right? People are seeing me. I'm walking up into this line. Now that would have bothered me before. Now it didn't bother me, because not only had I learned that these meds might help me, I also learned that I'm the only one that matters as far as what I think, you know. And other people are going to say what they're going to say. They may, you know what, if I get in a fight over it, if I get in a fist fight because of it, hey, so what? What if I lose? So what? You know what I mean? You're going to fail, and that's another thing. Learn to fail and love the failure. You know
you leave me right down like all my questions. It's funny. One of the last questions I had is, is what is Dave's secret to success, man? Because it's remarkable. Obviously, we're talking because it's remarkable. I mean, I think if you looked at anybody and go, God, this guy's been in jail like 4 times, 15 years, drug addict, meth, I mean, all this kind of stuff like that. And then you are where you are now, it just is extraordinary. But what is like your secret to success? Like, is it what is your philosophy, your recipe? Then obviously to kind of go on a pun, but like, what's your deal, man? Like, what's your underlying core philosophy then?
Humility, acceptance, accountability to self. Accountability is a great word, because once you realize that it's your next thought that's going to influence your next decision and your next action. They're very simple concepts. What are you thinking right now? Are you off thinking I suck, or I'm bad at this, or this person, I hate this person, I'm resentful about this? Those are all things that have to be overcome. You have to begin. I had to begin to realize that I could change the way I think. And once I did that, I realized that I could.
How do you change the way you think? By the way, is it through reading,
practice,
prayer?
It's a lot of practice and structure. A lot of structure. My days are pretty well structured. I exercise. That's another thing. Exercising, like you say, releases endorphins, but it's another discipline that keeps your mind going in the right direction. The more you do good things, the less you have time for negativity.
I did an interview the issue before last with this guy named Johan Hari. I found him on, he's a TEDx guy, so on YouTube. He has a 10 bazillion, and he wrote a couple of cool books. One is on addiction and sobriety, and the other one's actually on depression. I didn't even realize it was the same guy. I read his depression book. It was called like The Cure for Depression. One of the things that he talks about is having a purpose. Also for addiction too, like he talks about connectedness and purpose. And then also the whole idea that like your depression makes sense. Like I get it. I understand where you are. And it takes me back, of course, to hearing my dad when I was a little kid saying, idle mind or idle time or idle hands are the devil's workshop. I do think that, like, if you're purpose-driven, I was talking to somebody the other day about they got kids that are 10 or 11 that are in sports. I said, keep them in sports, man. Like, put fuel on the fire, encourage it, pay for coaching. Do you want to do everything that you can do to make sure that your kid is focused on something?
It's got to be harder today than it ever has been for kids. They have so many ways to screw up right there before them all the time. so many bad influences. They also have a lot of good influences available. I mean, the internet. I mean, we didn't have that when we were kids. They can't imagine what our lives were like, and we can't really imagine, can't really put ourselves in their position as to where their minds are at, because they're dealing with minds without all this experience that we have, and they're just getting it bombarded at them. You know,
Yeah.
I don't even know how. I love talking to kids. A lot of times I'll sit and I'll talk. I mean, I'll get invited to speak to kids, at-risk youth and stuff like that. You know, giving them love is a key thing. You know, loving them through it all. In a way, you have to love them unconditionally to some degree. You also have to hold them accountable. So there is all that tough love. I think tough love is crucial. I think that our society doesn't have enough toughness, not enough tough love. People don't
and
get
there's consequences. There's consequences for your actions too. That you're ultimately the creator of what it is that you got. You know.
Yeah, and how powerful is that? You know, here you can look at it like, well, damn it, I just keep creating bullshit for myself. Or you can look at it like, wow, I had the power to change that. And it's not going to be easy, and the solutions aren't going to come overnight, probably. It took me many years of struggle and depression and just misery before I finally realized that I could do something about it.
Yeah.
So I think it took practice. I think it took a lot of practice.
So is that then, I guess, circling back to my question then, is that like your secret of success then is stay focused, get a goal, a vision, a dream, you know, something like that? What's the underlying core thing that you think are the most, what do you tell the kids? Is that the main thing that you tell them? Like,
I talk about structure. I talk about accountability. I talk about how your mind, you can train your mind to change your future. And you can enjoy the process along the way. Enjoy the journey, but make sure you're on the right path. You know, and if you make a mistake, get back on the path. Just keep working at it, you know, because life is not, there's no simple answers. But I believe for me and a lot of other people, you just have to struggle until you figure it out. And if you're willing to work for it and do the work, I think anybody can be successful.
So what drives you now? What are you passionate about besides, like, I know you're in your band and things like that. What motivates you? I know on your website, I saw your podcast. I mean, what do you, like you're saying, like when you first, you know, got depression medicine and you started taking computer-aided drafting classes in jail and whatnot, and then you're like, man, I can't. What excites you to get up in the morning now? I mean, you're not even the same person. Like, I mean, it's pretty amazing.
I get to drive a BMW i8 Roadster. I mean, or I can decide to drive my Tesla or my Ram pickup or my, you know what I mean?
Can you imagine?
And I'm not even.
What if, like, you could tell yourself that, like, 25 years ago, man, or like in 1998 or 1999?
Well, it would have been a lot easier to suffer if I'd have known that at the end of it, it was all going to be better.
Right.
But you don't see that when you're going through that shit.
No.
And now, you know, that's just the material side of things. But, you know, those material possessions actually make my day better. I actually enjoy. I'm not even a car guy. I'm not somebody who just worships cars. I just enjoy what they can do for me. I get in my car and I love it.
Have you ever heard the adage? I tell me and my daughter, we joke around and we say, you know, money is not the key to happiness. It's not. But you know what? It'll buy you a jet ski, and you never seen a happy person riding a jet ski.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to be miserable in a Mercedes than it is, you know, on a scooter.
Hey, man, and you learned it ain't like you found somebody's lottery ticket or cheated or stole. I mean, you worked hard. You made something really cool. I really think that
I'm still working.
Yeah, man, I think you're like American dream. You know, I even more pronounced the fact that people talk ups and downs. Nobody cares about a story where somebody's born with every kind of trapping of everything, and you just became a bazillionaire. I mean, people admire the Rocky story, man, and like maybe you start out good, then you get knocked flat a time, 2, 3, 4 times, and they just care about, like, did you get back up? Like, what did you do in the end, man?
It's good to be able to learn to fall well.
Fall well.
And I don't know if I would have survived that fall that I had with the cops and all that stuff that happened then, if I hadn't failed so badly before.
Yeah. Well, how can people get back in touch with you, help you, connect with you? Like, is it the podcast that's the most, what's the thing that you're most passionate about?
Podcast is, I'm more about now. I think I'm going to be doing a lot more speaking events. I have a couple of them coming up, so I'm trying to get prepared for that. The podcast is like, I have a good buddy who is my co-host on that, and I let him do most of those podcasts now because I'm so busy doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm really into now is getting ready to do some speaking, and people can contact me on my website, which I'm starting to develop my website to be more updated. I'm trying to update my website to DaveDahl360.com.
Dave 360. The number is D-A-V-E Dave D-A-H-L Dahl. The number 3, the number 6, the number 0.com. Right, Dave Dahl 360.
That's correct. And if anybody wants to just email me directly, I can give you one of my email addresses.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anybody that's listening to this is welcome to contact me. And that email address is the number 4X Loser 1. 4X Loser 1 at gmail.com.
4-time loser.
And it's not, and some people are like, well, that's so negative. No, it's not. It's not negative at all, because I've won. Now I'm a winner, And those losses that I had contributed, each one of those contributed to who I am today. So I'm very fortunate. So that's 4xloser1 at gmail.com.
Right on. Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate you. Not only taking the time, but as I mentioned before we started recording, the thing I'm grateful to is I get to have really cool, meaningful conversations with people. I don't know where you can be. I mean, the whole, cornerstone of like recovery is to actually just cut all the bullshit and like be real with people. So I appreciate your candor and your transparency and like, okay, I'm going to tell this, how deep you want to go, man. It's not always, it's dark stuff that we're dealing with, but I do think, you're a walking, talking example of hope, dude. Like, it's like, we're all flawed, okay, I'm still working the process, I'm still and that's even better, man. Like, but just what you've done to the next guy that's out there, it just gives everybody a lot of hope, man. It gives everybody that I told that I was going to do this interview was like, that is so cool. Like, I haven't met one person that did. They're like, from my daughter to my wife to my son, I was like, I'm going to interview, Dave's Killer Bread. I'm going to interview him.
It's unbelievable what bread, making bread can do. You can make a lot of products and people won't know you. But bread, when you got your name on a loaf of bread.
It's a damn good sandwich, man.
Hey, man, I hope you can, if you ever come to Portland, you're welcome to come to see me.
Oh,
especially at I'm in my high-rise penthouse right now, and I got African art everywhere. But you just got to see this place.
So I will for sure. As you know, I'm up in Seattle, and my mother-in-law is down in Portland. My wife is went to Tigard High School. So
well, you'll definitely get a hold of me. The other thing is I do have a family, and that's the other thing that I didn't get to is I'm very fortunate these days. Both of my daughters turned out great.
How old are they?
One of them's 31, the other's 35. And one of them lives in Sweden, and I have 3 granddaughters, and all of my kids turned out great. And what are the odds, And then I have a girlfriend, and she's got kids and grandkids. So I have a lot going on the personal side.
Yeah, man. You got a lot of stuff to be grateful and happy for and proud of and thankful for and look back. And I think that we all do. And just kind of the whole take one step at a time, one step at a time. And like I said, I'm just really happy and grateful that we had the time here to share together. I was inspired from the first time I ever looked at your bread. I was like, how cool is that, man? Like, dude is like putting something together for himself. And then I never really connected the recovery story until somebody brought it to my attention. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you hang on just a second here, I'm going to wrap up. You can get back with Dave. By the way, we're going to put all his contact information all around, of course, the article, as we do always. So it'll be real simple to go to his website, davedahl360.com. And I'll even make sure I put his email address in here. If there's speaking engagements or events or things like that, he's got a killer story. Obviously, you want to have you want to hear it. So, thanks so much, Dave. This has been another wrap or another great interview of Recovery Today magazine. And hang on one second, I'll just stop the recording here. Appreciate it.